Hilchas Avadim Perek Chamishi. So till now we learned the dinim of Hilchas Avadivri. That was the first three prokim, and then Hilchas Amivriya, which was the fourth Perek. And now the Rambam from here onwards starts learning about the dinim of an Evet Knaini. Perek Chamishi. Evet Knaini nikna b'chamisha dvarim. There's 5 ways that an Evet Knaini can be nikna. And v'keines atzmi b'shleisha, there's 3 ways that the Evet Knaini can be kaina himself. Nikna b'kesef, oy b'shtar, oy b'chazoke, oy b'chalipin, oy b'mashicha. So one of these 5 ways, either you paid kesef for him, or he wrote a shtar. The Evet writes the shtar to the Odin. Oy b'chazoke, the Odin made a chazaka on the Evet, or there was a kinyan chalipin on this Evet, with the Evet. Oy b'mashicha, you made a ma'aseh mashicha, which is a special din how you make a mashicha on an Evet. So all these 5 oifanim is Yokoina and Evet Knaini, which the Rambam discussed earlier and discussed it more beprotius in Hilchas Mechira. And the koina is atzmi bekesef, a b'shtar, a b'rosh yivar. And that's the 3 ways, either bekesef, in other words, that the Evet Knaini gives money, or someone gives money on behalf of the Evet Knaini to the Odin, so that's a ma'aseh kinyan of kesef, a b'shtar, or the Odin gives the Evet Knaini a shtar, a b'rosh yivarim, that the Odin knocks off one of the Rosh Yivarim, so then also he's Yetzel L'cheres, like we'll learn B'hamshich. So that's it. Then Evet Knaini is nicknamed either in 5 ways, or he could be kain himself in 3 ways. Now the Evet Cotton is Hareu Kibehema. He has a din like a behema, and therefore v'nikne b'mishicha k'mishichas habehema. Now we learned before that an Evet Knaini, even though he's nikne b'mishicha, but if you're going to call him by a behema, if you call the behema comes, so that's the kinyan Mashiach, because Lepela, the behema doesn't have das, so Mele, he's coming because you called him. Masha'enkin, when you call a ben das, and then he comes because you called him, so it's not pshat damis, you're calling him, caused him to come. He made a decision to come when you called him. It was like a decision. It wasn't like an instinctive reaction. It was more of a decision. Since he's a ben das, so in Mele, so you can't say you were moishechem. In other words, you obviously started the process. You called him, but then he decided to come. So therefore, when he comes, because he decided to come, that's not called Mashiach. But an Eved, in order for it to be called a Mashiach, you have to schlep him. Only then would it be called a Mashiach. When we're talking about an Evet Cotton, so an Evet Cotton, so even though of course when you schlep him, you'll be kinder. He's not any different, not any worse than an Evet Gadol. But by an Evet Cotton, the chiddush is that even if you just call him, and as a result of that he comes, that's also called Mashiach. That's this din. The Evet Cotton is Hareu Kubehema, and therefore v'niknu v'mashicha k'mashichas ha-behema. The same mashicha that would work for a behema would work for an Evet Cotton, which is kaira levu ba. K'var be'arnu b'tchila sefer zeh kol hadrachim she'avadim niknu ben beprotius. How is an Evet nikna the protis of the kinyan? The Rambam discussed in the beginning of Sefer Kinyan, which is in Hilchas Mechira. Halacha base keitzat koines atzmi b'kesef. So in Hilchas Mechira, the Rambam discussed how you koin an Evet. Now the Rambam is discussing how the Evet is koines atzmi. Keitzat koines atzmi b'kesef. B'pashas l'chura, an Evet doesn't have any money. An Evet kol ma shekona Evet kona rabbi. Say keitzat koines atzmi b'kesef. Ki gein shenosin echad l'rabbi mois. Ba'amar le'amanas she'etzia avdecha b'em l'cheres. In other words, he didn't have money, but someone else gave money on his behalf, and he told the Odin, amanas she'etzia avdecha b'em l'cheres. So obviously the Odin is not mechuyev to relinquish the Eved because someone's giving money for him. He was mekabel the kesef. So then Yotza Eved l'cheres, the Eved goes out l'cheres, even though the Eved wasn't really involved in this discussion. Or someone goes to the Rav and he gives money in order for the Rav to free this Eved. So the din is kivin shekibel haravis hakesef is Yotza Eved l'cheres. Ain't tzorich das Eved. Why? So the Rambam says, "Sheschusule v'zochel adam shlei b'fanav." Since it's a schusule for the Eved to go out free, so therefore he goes out free even without discussing with the Eved. Now, l'chura the pashtus is you're saying the reason why he goes out free is because it's schusule. So what happens if the Eved says clearly he doesn't want? If the Eved says clearly he doesn't want, so l'chura normally when we say zochel adam shlei b'fanav, so you do something which is a ma'aser schus, you makabel matana for someone, but that person could always say he doesn't want it. Because it's not a schus for a person to be mechuyev to accept something. So over here also, l'chura, since the Rambam says that the reason is shezochel adam shlei b'fanav, so if he says clearly he doesn't want, so b'chiyah gavna, he taka is not kain himself. So even though someone gave money to the Odin, in order for him to go out free, and the Adon accepted it. But if he doesn't want to go out free, then he doesn't go out free through such a way, through that money that was given to the Adon. That's the Shittas Rambam Pashtus. It doesn't say clearly in the Rambam, that's L'chura the Pashtus, because the Rambam says Chusulei v'zachem v'adam shlei b'fanav. Mashenken, the Rosh argues, the Rosh holds that even in a case where he says clearly he doesn't want, but Lepel, since the Adon accepted money, in other words, the Adon could go ahead and Meshachar the Eved, give him a shtar shikhr b'karchi. He doesn't have to ask the Eved. But Lepel, over here, he was Mekabel Kesef from someone, and through that he was makna him to himself. So the Rosh holds that B'chiyai Gavna, you don't need Daso Eved. You don't need Daso Eved. Even if the Eved is not interested, but Lepel, once the Adon was Mekabel Kesef from someone, in order for him to go out free, and the Adon is masking for him to go, the Adon wants him to go out free, so then the Daso Eved is not Negeh. That's the, so one way is that someone gave money directly to the Adon, and through that person dealing with the Adon, so the Eved went out free. V'chein, another situation is, if Nosim Echad LaEved Mois, they gave the money to the Eved, V'amar al Menashe Teitzibem L'cheres, I'm giving you the money, not for your use, but rather al Menashe Teitzibem L'cheres. So then again, if the Adon is willing to accept the Mois in order for the Eved to go out free, is Yotze Eved L'cheres. However, if the Adon wasn't masking to take the money in order for him to go out free, is this person that gave the Eved the money was only a Menashe Yitzbam L'cheres. So Memela, so therefore, if the Adon is willing to accept that money, so then he goes out L'cheres. To acquire an Eved K'naini, to make the Ma'aseh Kinyan in order for you to have the Eved K'naini. And al derezeh for the Eved K'naini to be kohen himself is either through someone giving money to the Adon, or the Eved K'naini himself giving money to the Adon. So either way, it could be done either with kesef or with shaveh kesef. Echad ha-kesef, shaveh kesef, bein l'kneisei, whether to be kohen the Eved K'naini, or bein l'haknis atzmalei, to be makna the Eved K'naini to himself. So that's the seder of a shtar. Shtar is a kesef rather. The seder of kesef is that either the Eved K'naini, someone gives the kesef on behalf of the Eved K'naini, or the Eved K'naini receives kesef with the clear earmarked in order to go out lecheres with this money. Halacha Gimel. And we have machlekes whether or not once someone gives money to the Adon and the Adon accepts it, amanas that the Eved should go out lecheres, could the Eved say, I don't accept it? Halacha Gimel. Ketzad b'shtar, koisev le'al niyor el acheres, harei ad ben chen, harei ad shel atzmecha. He writes a shtar, he writes on a niyar or on a cheres, Hariyat ben chen, Hariyat shalatzmucha, ein liyesig bo, v'chol ki yetz b'zeh b'inyan zeh, shezeh gufa shall get shikhr, that you are a free man, you have no shackles with me. Umeisele es ashtar b'fnei shnei edim, and this mesira of the shtar, the Rambam B'chalal holds edim mesira kars. So the ikar is the mesira ashtar has to be b'fnei edim. But the Rambam holds that even though we hold edim mesira karsi, but if there's Eidich Sima and there's no Eidich Mesira, they have a din as if there would have been Eidich Mesira. So Eidich Sima is as if there would have been Eidich Mesira. That's not everyone agrees to that shita, but that's the shita Saram, the shita Sarif. That so Memelo Meisel is Ashtar b'fnei shnei Edim, Oisha Yo Edim Chsumim Bei, and also Mosrele b'nei Levin Atzmei. If the Edim were Chsumim on the shtar and he gave it b'nei Levin Atzmei, is Arei Zeh Yotzel Lecheres Sharei. In other words, the question is how l'chura he had to get the get. So Lepel, since the get, the person, the Eved himself, the goof of the Eved belongs to the Adon. So Mele, it never really went out of the rishus of the Adon to the rishus of the Eved in order for him to get freed. In other words, the question is he has to get the get in order to be able to go out free. So what's actually he got it? He got it. L'chura means that he has his own rishus. But Lepel, he doesn't have his own rishus because the rishus Eved is rishus Rabbi. So mainly you have to say that the pshat is that while the Adon is giving it to him, so at that same time that the Adon is giving it to him, so he's becoming a ben chen. So it's gite v'yadi boin keachad. While he's giving the get, so it's yadi is also boin keachad. So mainly you could say that he received the get. So there's the word that says in Avadim Elohim that the pshat is b'shem Duran that the meisin is it's not his koina the get is what's really causing the shikhrut. Al that is by a get isha. It's not the fact that she was koinat. You can't be koinat something bal karcha. Pshat is the nesina, the fact that he gave it to her, that was the ma'isa nesina, which causes the shichr, and memela, together with that, it becomes the shichr. I'll call upon it. So, Sharigiti v'yadi boin ke'echad. In other words, when you give the shtar shichr to the Eved, so at that point in time, while you're giving it to him, he becomes meshucher, and memela works together. Now, Amalei, that's so the gather of a shtar is that you write him al aniyor, al acheres, and you give it b'fnei Edom, or you have Edom signed on the shtar. Now, Amalei shalei b'ksav, if he didn't, there was no shtar, he just said, he made a proclamation. Harei ad ben chayrin, harei ad shal atzmecha. Is afal pi she'idol of Edom bebezdin. He brought Edom to Bezdin to proclaim that this person is a ben chayrin. V'afal pi she'konim miyodei, they made a ma'isa kinyan of ma'isa chlipin, which he's nikne b'chlipin, we said. But lepeil, he's not koines atzmei b'chlipin. Adayin lein nishtachri. She'ena Eved yetzel lecheres ele b'kesef, either that the Eved gave kesef or shaveh kesef to the Yodin, or someone gave on his behalf, A, b'shtar, or he received a shtar from the Yodin, that the Yodin gave him a shtar, and through that he became free. There was Giti v'Yodi boin ke'echad. A, b'Roshi Yivar, like we'll learn Behemsha, that the Yodin broke off, took off one of the Roshi Yivarim, so that also is Mishachar the Eved. V'hakesev l'shivchosei, Hareat muteres l'cholodim li'omer klum. Because that Lashon Hareat muteres l'cholodim is a Lashon of Gerishim. So for a wife, that's a good Lashon, that's a Lashon of a get. Masha'enkin of a shivcha is not a get of muteres l'cholodim. It's a Hareat la'atzmucha, like we said before, that he owns her, and Memela, now she's becoming la'atzma, now she's being owned by herself. It's not a question of her being muter l'cholodim. Over here the question is whether or not he's owning her or he's no longer owning her. Now we mentioned before that Rashi Yivarim is one of the ways that an Eved goes out. Ketzid b'Rashi Yivarim, Hamakis Avdi b'Kavona. So it has to be he was Makeh b'Kavona. If it was Shlei b'Kavona, so that's not considered, then you're not Yetzid b'Rashi Yivarim. Hamakis Avdi b'Kavona, v'chisrei echod mi'esrim barbo Rashi Yivarim she'enum chezim. So the Ram is going to teach us later what are the esrim barbo Rashi Yivarim which enum chezim. So if he was mechasa one of those 24 Yivarim, which is enum chezim, and it was done b'Kavona, so it's yotzel l'cheres. So then the Eved is yotzel l'cheres. But lepeil is sorry get shikhr. Because even though he's yotzel l'cheres, and the Ram will say later it's a knas that he's yotzel l'cheres, but lepeil he needs a shtar shikhr to be yotzet, for to become a full meshuchrer, he needs a shtar shikhr. Now, once we say that there's esrim barbo Rashi Yivarim, so what's in Kain Lom and Emma B'Teira Shem V'Ayin? So what does the Teira speak about Shem V'Ayin? L'chura, there's esrim barbo Rashi Yivarim. Is lidin me'am, because you to learn out from the Shem V'Ayin. What's lidin me'am? Ma Shem V'Ayin mumin shebegoli v'einum chezum. So they're mumin shebegoli, you could see them. You could see the ayin, you could see the Shem. And v'einum chezum, they're not going to grow back. The ayin is not going to come back. And al derez of the Shem, we're talking about a Shem that doesn't come back. Whereas there is a mitzvah of a Shem that does come back. But lepeil, we learn out from ayin that it has to be a Shem doing with the ayin. Over here, the Rambam is not speaking about this prat that behemshach, that the mapel Shem cotton is not yetzel l'cheres because it's not dum yadayin. So we learn out that the Shem has to be dum yadayin, that it's einei choizer. Nachamo. Ma Shem v'ayin mumin shebegoli ve'einum chayzer is af kol mumin shebegoli ve'einum chayzim yotza have be'lecheres. That if we're dealing with a mum shebegoli and it's einei choizer, has to be two pratim. Say it's a mum shebegoli and say it's einei choizer. Only then is he yetzel l'cheres. Aval hamasaris avdi bebeitzim oy achoytech l'shenis. So the Rambam paskin that these are considered not a mum shebegoli, and there's machlekes in Gemara. Aval hamasaris avdi bebeitzim oy achoytech l'sheni is einei yetzel l'cheres. Why she'eina mum shebegoli? They're not considered a mum shebegoli. That's been again. There has to be a mum shebegoli. And v'chein hamapol sheina cotton is also einei yetzel l'cheres. Why shari sefer lagzer? So it has to be a mum shebegoli and einei chezer. Mum shebegoli is shelu hamasaris avdi bebeitzim or his chaytech l'sheni, and and that's has to be a mum shebegoli and it has to be einei chezer. So that's shelu if it's talking about a sheina cotton. Now, be'em is the fact that it's a sheina cotton is not chayzer that we learn now from ayin. So that's what we learn now. That's why it says shein v'ayin. Now the reason why it says ayin and not and the reason why it says ayin and the reason why it says ayin, we don't see shein itself, because if it would say shein itself, you could think that maybe the shein is even a shein which is chayzer. So that's why you need ayin to tell you that it's dafka an ayin, which is Ein Chezer, and there is a shein is also Ein Chezer. And the reason why it says shein, even though it says ayin, is because if it wouldn't have said shein, we would have said dafka like an ayin, which he was born with the ayin. The Ram doesn't say this, Masha'inkin a shein, since he wasn't born with the shein, so maybe he's not Chezer with a shein. So that's why it has to say sai shein v'ayin. But the Ram is saying that we learn out from shein v'ayin that it has to be a mum shevigoli, and it has to be Ein Chezer. Halacha hey. Ein yoytze b'roshei ivorim el avadim shemolu v'tovlu. So there's a mitzvah of an eved that a person buys, and he doesn't become mamish a din of an eved knaini. There's a musig if you buy him and you made up with chatchila that he's not going to really have the dinim of an eved knaini. An eved knaini is like yotze from klal goy, and he's a shtickle yid, he's mechuyev b'mitzvahs. Masha'in kain, and a person kills him, you chayiv misa on it. Masha'in kain, there's a mitzvah of someone owning a goy and he didn't become an eved knaini. So that's an ein yetze b'roshei ivarim el avadim shemolu v'tovlu. If it was molu v'tovlu, shari yeshnem b'mixas mitzvahs, he's already mechuyev mitzvahs ki'isha. Aval ha'eved shehu b'giyusei, if ha'eved is still a goy, is notice he wasn't molu v'tovlu, is ein yetze b'roshei ivarim. This din of yitzia b'roshei ivarim is a special din for an eved knaini, which is already not really a regular. He's not a goy anymore, a regular goy. He's yotze miklal lakum, but lepel is not a Yisrael either. Now, Elohein Roshei Ivarim She'enim Chezim. So there's the Etzbeis Yadayim V'Raglayim. So the fingers of the Yadayim V'Raglayim, that's already Esrim. Then Roshei Aznayim, which the Ram is counting those as one. Roshei Aznayim. And then there's the Reisha Chetim of the nose. And Reisha Gvia of the Aver. And V'Roshei Hadadim Shebeisha. By an Isha, there's also the Roshei Hadadim. The Roshei Hadadim also is considered Aver. Aval Heinayim V'Hashinayim T'chareinim Mufurashim B'Teirah. So that doesn't go into the klal of the Esrim Barba Roshei Ivarim. The Esrim Barba Roshei Ivarim is the Etzbeis Yadayim V'Raglayim, which are Esrim, and the Roshei Aznayim, the Reisha Chetim, Reisha Gvia. So could be Bahamas Roshei Aznayim, that's 2, and Reisha Chetim, Reisha Gvia, that's already 4. That's already 24. And then there's another din of Roshei Adan Shabisha. There's the Esrim Barba which is by a ish. And then there's also the Rosh Hashanah Shvisha, which the Ram is counting separately. Halacha Vav. Hoiseloi etzba yisera v'chotcha. So notice the Adon was choytech an etzba, but not etzba from the 5 etzbas. As an etzba, he had a 6th etzba. And lepel, the Adon was choytech that etzba yisera. So it depends. Even the speres al gaba yad, knows if it was in the same row of the regular fingers, there's the same row where the 5 fingers are. So there was another finger, a 6th finger, so then it's considered like a din of a finger, and therefore Eved Yesef Alecheres. Masha'inkin, if it was a finger that there wasn't really in the regular row of fingers, so then it doesn't have a din of a regular Aver, and then the Eved is Ein Yesef Alecheres. Nahoiso Eses Oinoi Smuya. His eye was already blind. He wasn't able to see with the eye. Abalapel v'chitata. This Adon took out the eye itself, took out the eyeball. That eyeball wasn't already seeing, but he went ahead and took out the eyeball. So then it's Eved Yetziv Alecheres, Sharei Chisrei Eva. Because Lepel was Mechaser and Eva. In other words, he had an eye, the eye wasn't functioning. But Lepel, he had an eye, and that eye now, he doesn't have that eye. Any of the 24 Roshei Ivarim, which Lepel wasn't functioning, he had a finger which was not a functioning finger, but Lepel was there. And Lepel, the Adon went ahead and took off. He was mechaser the finger, even though the finger wasn't a functioning finger, is also his Yetzel Lecheres. Shemchatchei hari chisrei Ever and memele Yetzel Lecheres. So we're saying that when he was mechaser Ever, even if it was a non-functioning Ever, nevertheless, Lepel, since he was mechaser Ever, is Yetzel Lecheres. Halacha Zayin, hiko al einei v'sima. He didn't actually take out the eye, he made him blind. He hit him on his eye and he made him blind. Or alozne, he hit him on his ear, v'chirshin, he made him deaf. So the din is Eved Yetziv Lecheres. So the Eved is Yetziv Lecheres. So even though he didn't actually take away the Aver, but he caused that the Aver is no longer functional, so he's Yetziv Lecheres. That's talking about if it was Al Eine or Al Ozne. However, he co-connected Ozne, Veinere. He knows he gave a big bang near his eyes, and as a result of that, he got very frightened, and Mimele he can't see anymore. Or Keneged Ozne, he made a bang, he didn't actually hit his ear, he made a bang near his ear, and Mimele as a result of that, Ein Shemea, so then it's Ein Eved Yetziv Lecheres, because then he's considered like a groma. Whereas when a person directly hits the Eved, so that's considered he was Makah the Avdei, Meilis Yetzel Lecheres. But if he goes ahead, Keneged Einei, Keneged Oznei, so then is Ein Eved Yetzel Bem Lecheres. Now, Halacha Ches. Hiko al Einei v'chosr me'era. So we had before in Halacha Zayin, we had an Halacha Vav that he was blind and he took out the eyeball, he goes out Lecheres. Then in Halacha Zayin we had that he made him blind. Hiko al Einei v'sima. So if he made him blind and directly hit him on his eye and he made him blind, so he's Yetzel Lecheres. Now Hiko al Einei, and he didn't make him blind, but v'chosr me'era, he can't see so well anymore. Or al Shinei, he hit him on his tooth, and another, that now it's the tooth is wobbling. Is as im yochel lishtamish bem, if he could still function with this eye or with this tooth, so then it's ein yetzel lecheres. So even though he took away some of its function, but still it's a functional aver, so therefore ein yetzel lecheres. However, v'im lav yetzel lecheres. Halacha tes. So we had the case where a person was blind, and lepel he took out the eyeball. So then he's also Yetzel Lecheres, because Lepel he took out an aver, or he had an aver which was not functional, and Lepel he took away the aver, so that's also considered Yetzel Lecheres. That was din number one. Then there was another din Halacha Zayin that we learned that if he actually blinded him or he made him deaf by hitting him, so he's also Yetzel Lecheres. Even though he still has the aver, but Lepel he caused him to become deaf, he caused him to become blind, so that's also Yetzel Lecheres. Then we learned that even if he didn't mamish make him deaf, but it was chaser me'era, or he didn't mamish take out the tooth, but now the tooth is shuckling, so it depends. If that eye or that tooth is still functional, so then he's not Yosel Lecheres, because Lepel is still functional. Masha'enkin, if it's not functional, so even though there's a little bit of something there, but Lepel, since it's not functional, so therefore he's Yosel Lecheres. Just like if he would have made him blind. Just like made him blind is Yosel Lecheres. So if he made his eye that it should be non-functional, so therefore it's also Yotzel Lecheres. Halacha test. Now, hoisa einoi keya v'chaser meira. A person has an eye which is shvach and chaser meira, or shinoi nidedus, or he has lechatchila a shvacha tooth. So here we're starting this a new case. He had already a shvacha eye b'chatchila, or he had a shvacha tooth b'chatchila. And now v'hiko ha'odin, v'hiko ha'shena nidedus, and now the Odin went and he knocked out that tooth which was already shuckling. Or he went ahead and blinded the eye which was shvach. If Lepel, that eye was a functional eye, so means it's considered that he had an eye, he had a tooth. And Memela is Yotzel Lecheres. However, Vimlav, if it wasn't a functional eye, is Le Yotzel Lecheres. It's the same idea. Just like in Halacha Ches we say, that if he made it non-functional, so it's Yotzel Lecheres. Masha'enkin, if it's still functional, it's not Yotzel Lecheres. Over here, when he takes something which is non-functional and he makes it blind, so it's again Yotzel Lecheres, because it was already not functional. Masha'enkin, if it was functional and then he makes it blind. And if the tooth was functional and then he knocks it out, so then it's Yotzel Lecheres. Now before Benegay eye, we said before that even if it was blind and then he knocks it out, he's Yotzel Lecheres, because Lepel he knocked it out. But by a tooth is not like that. By a tooth, since a tooth, the whole union of a tooth is functional. So if the tooth is not functional, so even if you go ahead and knock out the tooth, it doesn't have the same thing like an eye which was blind and you took out the eyeball. Because by a tooth, if you had a non-functional tooth and you knock out the tooth, that's not considered anything, and therefore you're not Yotzel Lecheres. Halacha Yud. He called al Yod, he gave him a bang on his hand. V'tzofsi Yod, and his hand blew up. Of a Sefer Lazar, Lepel, the hand is going to come back. And it was Itaka blew up, but Lepel, it's revert back to where it was. Is Eini Yetzel Lecheres. Now Tolash Biskone, he pulled out his beard, and V'dildul Be'etzim and Alechi, and he pulled out like the bone from the jawbone. So then is Yotzel Lecheres. Why? Shari Bittul Maisa Shenayim Akvuis B'Yisei Etzem. Whereas that jawbone has teeth attached to it. And Memela, once he pulls out that jawbone, those teeth aren't going to be functional. So Memela, it's kind of like he took teeth and he made them non-functional, just like we said before, that if he made the tooth wobbling to the extent where it can be functional, so Memela is Yotzel Lecheres. Over here also, by causing that this etzem should be schlepped out from the lechi, so Memela is definitely caused that the teeth that are attached to it shouldn't be functional. Now, he had no intention. We said before, we started off that he did it b'kavana. If he did it b'kavana, His intention was to throw it at a behemah. And lepel v'naflu be'eved v'ipila sheni or v'chotchetz boy. It either knocked out his tooth or it cut off his finger. So we learn out that this whole din that is yotze b'shem ba'ayin or b'chavdal Rashi Yivarim is only if there was kavanah l'hap. Now hoishit yodei l'me'eshiv chosei. Person has a shivcha and he puts his hand into the me'i of the shivcha, into her womb, and v'sima ein ha'uber shibmeya. And while he was doing that, he blinded the eye of the embryo of the child, of the vlad. Is liyatza l'cheres shar liyada davar she'ischavel. The whole din is only when he's mischaven. And over here he has his hand in the me'i of the shivcha. So obviously he doesn't know what he's doing. So in Mela, the fact that he touched the uber's eye and he caused the uber to blind it, that's not considered he did it the kavan. Halacha Yud Gimel Areisha HaYirabi Reifei V'Omerlei, and the Evet tells to the Rabbi, Choyli Eini, go ahead and put some dye into my eye, which is a certain refuah. And Vesima, and Lepel, the Adam blinded him. Because he wanted to put the refuah, he didn't want to blind him, but he wanted to put in this refuah. And Lepel, he blinded him. Chater Lishini, go and make a cavity, like dig around my tooth, and lepel v'hipila, lepel, he ended up knocking out the tooth. In other words, what he was doing with intent. He didn't have intent on knocking out the tooth. He didn't have intent of knocking out the eye. But what he was doing with intent. So this Eved, which asked the rabbi to do this for him, and l'chur, it seems like the rabbi was doing him a favor, is sichik b'od v'yotzel l'cheresh. Aval b'shul nischav l'hazik. The rabbi had no intent of being mazik. Ari nischav l'negeh be'evri Eved. Lepel, he touched the Avery Avid, he put him into a sakana of having this thing done to him. Lepel was done to him. So Mela, what he did was with intent. You don't have to have intent for damage, you have to intend to do what you did. In other words, if he clearly had intention of taking out one of the Ivarim, and he was doing it not in order to be mazik, he was doing it in order to help out the Avid. The Avid wanted him to do it. It was something to do. But Lepel, since he did it, and he did it with intent, so therefore is Yetzel L'cheres. The Chiddush is, as long as you do it with intent, even if you didn't do it lahazik, is Yetzel L'cheres. Hamapel Shein Avde, someone was Mapel Shein Avde, he knocked out the tooth of the Avid, and then the Sime Yiseni, and then he blinded him. So the din is Hari Yotzel L'cheres B'shini, because of the tooth, he's already Yotzel L'cheres. And Memela, so he owes him for the ayin, because once he was Misamis Eina, he was already Ben Chen. Is Veneslid Mei Eina, V'chen Kol Keitz with us, even though he doesn't have yet a Shtar Shechur. And we said before that a Mapel Sheni needs a Shtar Shechur, but nevertheless, he's entitled to be paid for his ayin. Halacha Tezvav. Mi Shechetzi Eved V'chetzi Ben Chen, or V'Eved Shel Shnei Shutfim, so the din is Eina Yetzi B'Rosh Eivar. Why? L'fish Eina Meyuchad L'Rabbi Shechavu B'Ei. This din, that someone that's choyvel ba'avdei, and Memela knocks out a shein or an ayin, or the chodal Rashi Yivarim, that's only someone that he's completely the odin of this eved. Mashenkin is someone that's owned by two people, so the person that did it was not a full odin, he was only a half odin. And al that is if he's a chetzi eved, chetzi ben, so again, he's not a full odin. So the din of going out with shein va'ayin only applies to someone that's a complete eved. He's completely an Eved. He's the complete oven. He's a complete Eved. So the din of Yitzia b'Shem v'Ayin doesn't apply. Halacha Tezayin. Now, when a woman gets married, so there's nechasim that she brings into the marriage, and that nechasim could be either Tzayin Barzel or Nichsim Ulug, which we discussed Kabapam. Tzayin Barzel means that this nechasim really she's giving over to her husband, and her husband becomes responsible for it. So it's like she brought it into the marriage, now it's the husband's nechasim. It's just that the husband is responsible, that in case that he divorces her, or that he dies, so she will be reimbursed, either if the nechasim are still there, she'll be getting back those nechasim, and if not, she'll be reimbursed for those nechasim. Masha'enki nichsim melug of nechasim of hers, which she still owns, just that the Baal has a right to eat the payers of those nechasim. That's what nichsim melug is. Now, avdei tzein barzel, if you have avodim, which are tzein barzel, which were brought into the marriage, and those avodim are now the odin, the Baals, it's just that will have to reimburse her if he divorces her or he dies. So then, Yoitze b'Rosh Yivarim, Chisron Abal. If the Baal was mechasa by them, Rosh Yivarim, so since he's the owner, because they were Nitzit St. Barzel, so they were brought in to be owned by him, so Memelis, he was mechasa them, so then they're Yoitze b'Rosh Yivarim, Avaleho Isha. But if the Isha was mechasa them, so the Isha doesn't own them anymore, because the Isha gave them over to the Baal. Now, Avadim Malug, which is Avadim, which really belongs to the Isha, just that the Baal is Eichel Peiris, is Einam Yoitzim Rosh Yivarim, Leim Hipul HaBaal, Shari Eilem Bemel Peiris. If the Baal was Mapul the Rosh Yivarim, since he only has Peiris, so they're not going to be Yoitzah with the fact that Hipul HaBaal, V'leim Epileis Ma'isha, Bibnei, She'einam Yuchad Lo, they're not Meyuchad to her, because the Baal has a schus in the Peiris. Halacha Yud Zayin, Yitzia Sa'avid B'Rosh Yivarim, is neig b'chol mokim b'chol zman. I mean, the musik of an Eved Divri is only neig b'zman shayevel neig. The musik of an Eved Knaini is neig b'chol zman. There's not totally in yevel. So the musik of an Eved Knaini, Yitzias Eved b'Rosh Yivarim, is neig b'chol mokim b'chol zman. Aber lepel ve'ein donen beid to be done this din is eli b'bezn smuchim. You have to have a bezn smuchim they shu knas. Whereas this din is a knas. In other words, the fact that the odin is meitzi the Eved is a knas. So mainly you need a bezn smuchim to pass in knosses. Lefichach, since it's a knas, is a Eved she'amul rabbi, he palte is shini, v'simesis eini. So that's he's tiny, he palte is shini, v'simesis eini. So mele I should go out lecheres because of shini, and also you owe me money for my einai. V'hodin eimer le'asisi zeh. The Odin says I didn't do it. So the din is potter. He's potter. First of all, he's potter from Shuas Hesses. Because lepel, even Shuas Hesses means if you would be made, you would be chayav. But over here, even if you would be made, you would be potter. Shem yedim yatzmei. If he would have been made, he would have been potter, because lepel is made the beknas is potter. So in so you can't be chayiv a shvua for this taina, because the tviyah can't be mechayiv a moment. There's also a din. L'mashal, there's a din when a person has a tviyah and then he's nishba against the tviyah. He says he denies owing the money and he's nishba, and then he's made that he was nishba l'sheker, so he has to pay a keren v'chemesh. So he's also potter, because over here there was no real chiyuv. So that's why. Even if he would be made to be atzme, in Echayev leitzil lecheres b'le'edem, sh'amei de b'knas potter k'misha b'yanam hilchas gneva, shekol made the b'knas potter m'l'shalmi. Every person that's made the b'knas potter m'l'shalmi. So over here also the musig that the odin should be mishachar in the eved is a knas. And Mimela, even if the odin would be moida that he was taken mapul shinei and Misam saying he's potter from the knas of be mishacharim, and Mimela is also potter from any inyanim of chavola, because the chavola is only when it's a becher. But Mashenkin, since he's potter from the knas of being mishacharim, so he's an evet. So Mimela he's potter also for the chavola.